you don't have fear and self-doubt, I don't think you're pushing yourself hard enough. I don't think you're ever going to reach your potential if you don't have to face that, fear and self-doubt. It's just, um, it's part of growth is what it is.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. I'm your host, Phil Moeller, and on this podcast, we will be interviewing guests that have made their mark in real estate, in business, and in other areas of life. Listening to podcasts myself has helped me in so many different ways and continues to do so. If you're a real estate investor or an entrepreneur, or aspiring to be either, or just someone that wants to learn, you've come to the right place. An easy way to have an impact is to share this episode with friends or family, provide a review, or just spread the word. We greatly appreciate it, and now let's get to the show. Welcome everyone to the show today. I'm very excited for our guest today, Brian Briscoe. Brian, how are you doing today?
Doing really good. How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing great. For our listeners, Brian, first retired Marine. Brian, thank you for your service.
Thanks, man.
Also, the founder of Streamline Capital Group, has a Tribe of Titans multifamily educational community. So very, very knowledgeable in the educational or in the real estate space, not just for himself, but also teaching others how to do it. And host of the podcast Diary of an Apartment Investor. So, Brian, I want to start with just high level your story. What led you up to real estate and where you are today? How did you get here?
It was a very roundabout path. They say shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, and I didn't understand that for many years, but graduated high school and going way back, that was mid 90s, but did what everybody told me I needed to do, go to college and get a good job. And, you know, um, I liked teaching and I was good at math. And so I got my bachelor's and master's in math and decided to go get a PhD so I could end up teaching math at a university somewhere. And, um, that was the first plan that never really materialized. I spent like 6 years, in college for that one purpose. But September 11th happened, and that was my first big pivot, and so on September 12th, I ended up at a recruiter's office, along with a lot of other people actually, but ended up at a recruiter's office, and that was the start of a 20-year career in the Marines. And coincidentally, one of the last things I did before I signed on the dotted line was go back to the university that I was at in the PhD program and make sure that I could get back in, after a 3-year tour. And I
Yep.
I still have a letter from the University of Minnesota that allows me to get back in anytime I choose, but um, I don't think I'll ever use it. But yeah, so that trend that was the first big pivot, from potential career to let's go join the military and
Yeah,
um,
that's a big pivot. And thank you
yeah.
for that too, but that's a big one.
Yeah, it was, and I mean, looking back at it, hindsight's 2020. I think, looking back at it, I wasn't really enthused about the idea of being a math professor. It was just, what everyone was telling me to do: go to school, get a good job, go to school, get a good job, and but I'm kind of glad that I didn't do that. But along the way inside the military, I started meeting people that. And this is very common among military members, is you move every 1 to 3 years. If you're lucky, you're at a place 3 years, but a lot of people would buy houses and then just start stacking up rentals, so buy a house, move, and put tenants in. And I met a couple people who were doing that, and I thought, as long as I'm in the military, I might as well start doing it. um so it didn't work at every place that I was at, but you know 10, 15 years into my service, I had 3 single family homes, and they were appreciating in value. I was paying down the mortgages, and wasn't cash flowing a ton, but when I would look at my balance sheet and my net worth and all that stuff, I started realizing that there was a lot of magic in the real estate compared to other investments. And so um I kind of started leaning towards, real estate as the next big pivot. Once when at
Yep.
the time, when I was first doing it, I had like 3, 5 years of military service, and it was like when I get out, I'm going to.
Yep.
But I stayed long enough that I had to hit that 20-year mark for the retirement. And so it was really about year 17, 16, 17 of service, which corresponds to, 2017, 2018,
Yep.
when I really jumped to multifamily. And I got into a coaching program because I realized I didn't know half of what I thought I knew when I started looking at properties, and um, found several partners, 3 partners. We formed a company and started syndicating properties. And by the time I left active duty in 2021, um, we had, I think, 10 properties with a total of 700 and something units, mostly in
Wow.
South Carolina. But that partnership was going well enough that I comfortably retired from the Marine Corps without a second thought. It's just like, I got things are going well. So,
That's good stuff. And before we go on to that and just kind of from there to now, I want to stop because I took a couple of notes of some key takeaways I have from just what you said so far. First of all, you said you went into math because it's kind of what you were good at. I feel very similar in that I went into engineering because I
mhm,
was good at math and people were like, hey, try engineering because math's important. But I really didn't know what the heck engineering was, if
yeah.
I'm being perfectly honest with you. So what I think is important is if people are thinking about what they're doing or what they should they make a shift? What are you good at? Yes.
Yeah.
Are you passionate about it? Does it solve a problem? And can
Mhm.
you make money doing it? I think those are all the really 4 important questions that I think of when people are thinking about what should they do. It
Yeah.
sounds like your first path was I'm good at math, so let's do that, but it
Mhm.
wasn't really the answer to what you were looking for.
It wasn't, I missed number two. I wasn't passionate about it. Can you make money with math? Yeah, you can make a lot of money. There's lots of different careers where math is very integral. And I had one of my college professors, pointed out one day that what do we do in math classes? We sit around and solve problems every day. So mathematicians are really good at critical thinking and solving problems. So yeah, I mean, when you look at the math thing, I just wasn't passionate about it. I was good at it. Um, I remember my uncle. My uncle was like on the school board when I was growing up, and I remember him telling me once. I think my parents were bragging to him that I like had like a perfect score on the SAT in the math. And I remember him saying to me, people who are really good at math can make a lot of money. And for some reason, that's why I pursued math.
Yep.
It was just okay, I'm good at math. I can make a lot of money doing it. But,
And,
to your point, I was just never passionate.
and the other, I mentioned 3 things. The first, the just getting clarity on what you want to do. The
Yeah.
second thing is, I think for a math guy, I hesitated. I overanalyzed my first deal, but when I finally did it, I realized, oh, this makes sense on a lot of different levels. Real estate can make you money several different ways. So that was my second takeaway from your
Mhm.
discussion. And then the third one was when you started real estate, you got into a coaching program. And there can be fly by night bad coaching programs. I'm not saying everything is good, but I do think people should invest in their education if they're going in making a shift or doing something new, whether finding a mentor, finding a class, finding a coach, a course, whatever it might be. I think
Yeah.
all those things can accelerate success so much. So congratulations for
Thanks.
spending the money to do that.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, it wasn't what I expected, but I committed myself to making the most out of it, and it worked well. So, I mean, it definitely accelerated things, and that's kind of what the point is of coaching. So, um,
Awesome. Well, you said that you really started ramping up your real estate career. So first of all,
mhm.
the other thing is you said you started early and you build up to 3 or 4 units or duplexes, whatever you said, but slow and steady and just the numbers were working in your favor. The snowball is kind of slowly rolling down the hill, but building up and accumulating over time. It's not what's your phrase, Brian? Let's get to it. Don't
Don't
What?
wait. Yeah. Don't wait to invest in real estate. Invest in real estate and wait,
Yep.
and yeah.
And
So,
I think that's so good. So
yeah.
you started early, but then
Mhm.
you got into some different partnerships to accelerate things. So tell us more about how that worked.
At first, I think it was looking back at it, it was a partnership of convenience. It wasn't the best fit. And I think when I went into it in the back of my head, I was always a little bit, it wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I was in this coaching program, and of course, every coaching program says you have to find a partner, you have to share the load, you have to, and so I went with the coaching blueprint of, okay, I'm looking for partners, and um I found a couple of guys that we started collaborating together. We started working through, would get some apartment complexes, sent to us, hey, this one's for sale, and we'd do the analysis and everything else. And we agreed that, if we got something under contract, we'd work together. And so, first deal came under contract early 2019, probably 6 months after I joined the coaching program. And these guys that I'd been collaborating with, we just said, all right, let's take this down. And um, so there was four of us that came together to syndicate this, raise the capital, do everything around it. And a couple months into it, one of the four, called me up and said, hey, I like this group. I think we got a lot of long-term potential. Let's just do this exclusively. Let's, form an LLC, form a company, and start doing it. And I remember thinking at the time, this isn't exactly what I imagined, this isn't exactly what I want. But I remember thinking this is probably the best thing for me now, and what now looked like for me at the time is I was working at the Pentagon. I was leaving my house at, 5 something in the morning, getting home at, 6 o'clock at night. And so, having the extra horsepower, having to not recreate the team, every time I find another deal or find different partnerships, that's really what appealed to me. And I'm like, okay, for me now, this is actually great because I've got three guys that I know that I can reach out to. And I know that, we at least work together well enough to put one property under contract and get it closed. And so, yeah, we started a company and we started, we kept on syndicating properties. And I think 2019 we closed on three, and they're all small properties. I mean, um, maybe not small in unit count, but we were buying kind of like crappy little properties in Podunk, South Carolina, where we could still buy things at 30,000 a door. So
I remember those days.
yeah,
They're
and
not,
I mean,
that's not where it is today, but I remember those days.
no. And I think we picked just the perfect time.
Yeah.
But we had a couple of properties in a town with 13,000 people, and so we were kind of picking at first starting out, we were hitting the low-hanging fruit.
Yep.
And one of the frustrations that I had with that company is we were never getting into, we were 2 years later, 3 years later, when we had the capability to raise a lot more money, we weren't moving into the bigger stuff. The guy who was running acquisitions for us, kept on bringing in these, properties that had a lot of baggage, and it was, um, so I mean that was kind of like I probably didn't realize it at the time, but that was a frustration that I had that ended up, growing and along with other, small frustrations, but eventually I left that company.
And I think it's important to understand partnerships. And you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast,
Yeah.
this wasn't a straight line, but that partnership may have been a necessary step in the process to get you to the
Oh
next
yeah.
process and learn a lot of lessons about not just real
Hmm.
estate partnerships, whatever it might be. And I think what's important if people are in business and thinking about partnerships is just document and get a lot of clarity up front on who's going to do what. Make sure you do spend time on the operating agreement. The goal of an operating agreement is to
Yeah.
certainly put it in place and never use it again, but have really the best value, I think, is spend the time to have discussions around those things before you start and set the expectations. And that will make the likelihood of success of the partnership much
Yeah.
higher out of the gate versus not. Because partnerships can accelerate things, but of course there can be challenges with them. And yeah, communication and clarity up front, I think, is key.
Yeah, and one thing that I would suggest for everything that has to go in that operating agreement is a very well thought out exit plan, right? And we did not have a well thought out exit plan. I mean, we didn't even hire an attorney for our operating agreement. We got one of these off the shelf, LegalZoom.com type, operating agreements that wasn't, exactly perfect for the type of company that we were doing. And, it had the boilerplate off the shelf language for what happens when you exit. And, so, with the exit, there was, four partners, two of us were very similar in thought. So I mean, everything that we disagreed on, it was two versus two, and it was
Yeah.
always lines drawn along the same areas. But the guy that I always agreed with, he tried to get us to adopt EOS, the entrepreneurial
Yeah.
operating, because we had our roles defined, but what we had done is we like completely siloed. We were not really talking, we were not really coordinating. It was just like we had our swim lanes, and it was like, okay, you stay in your lane, I stay in my lane. And that was kind of like the attitude, inside the company, but there just wasn't a lot of collaboration. So
Let
the go ahead.
yeah, let's if we can. So EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System, Traction, the book. So the book Traction, the book Get a Grip is the fable about traction. Gino Wickman wrote all this. I actually just listened to Get a Grip. So I read Traction a couple
Got it.
years ago and recently read Get a Grip. And it's Get a Grip is the fable that really is simplifies it and put it into just simple terms, easy to follow, easy to understand.
Mhm.
So did you put in the system and how has that impacted things?
So at this company, I read Traction because, the partner suggested it. I'm like, yes, this is awesome. This is exactly what we need. We need to break down the walls. We need to have, everything that this book is telling us to do. And the other two partners, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, they're just like, we don't really need that. And there started the rift between the two sides just started getting bigger and bigger. And we weren't breaking down the silos. We basically got to the point to where, we weren't talking on a regular basis. And finally, the partner that introduced me to EOS, he was the first person to say, I can't do this anymore. I've got to, you know, this isn't working. I've got to move on. And, within it's at first I was pissed at him because, this was kind of like this. I viewed this company as my ticket to wealth in the future, and it was my next pivot. But after thinking about it for a month or two, it was just straight up, you know what, if he's leaving, the dynamics that are left in the company, they're not favorable to me. It
Yep.
was two to two. Now everything's going to be 2-1 when there's disagreements. And so, I made the decision to leave as well, which was it took me a long time to, come to grips with the fact that's what I needed to do. But so yeah, we both negotiated an exit, and once again, that operating agreement that we had, was not very clear on how that exit should happen, and the things that were written in it were just not possible. There was
Yep.
no potential for cash payouts because, we had a lot of equity in properties. We did not have a lot of cash in the bank, and so there was that part. How do how do we make sure that we're compensated for the equity that we have?
Right.
Um,
And
but
there's
yeah,
a
that
lot there's a lot there. So you didn't implement EOS with that partnership, but then you did in a future or in your current company. What
current
does
company,
that look
yes.
like? I want to dig into that more because I think EOS is applicable to
Yeah.
real estate investors with one property, with
Mhm.
10, with 100, whatever it is, business owners and
Yeah.
employee, like managers at companies. It's so applicable to apply to your team members. And even if it's not the EOS system, the fundamentals of it, I
Oh
think,
yeah.
are so good. So tell us more about it.
So EOS, for people who don't know what it is a framework that you can operate on which you operate a business. Okay. So it talks about, hey, what's the vision? What are your goals? What are your objectives? What does your company do? And it walks you through the purpose and organization, and it gives you all the tools you need to run the business. And honestly, it doesn't matter what the business is. It's just a tool for operating a business, for communicating, for solving problems, and creating a culture and everything else. And like I said, there's several things that the first partnership I had lacked on that one. And so when I left that company, it took me about a year to decide to form the next company. But when I formed it, the first thing I started doing is reaching out to EOS implementers, the people that you pay to help put yourself on the EOS program. And I remember talking with my current EOS implementer for the first time. I'm like, hey, I'm starting a company. I want to operate it on EOS. And he's like, well, usually we don't come in on a companies until, you have a certain amount of revenue and you have, you know, um, a certain amount of employees. And he said, I think the sweet spot is 10 employees. I'm just like, well, it's me and one other guy. Can we do it anyway? He's like, I guess, yeah, sure. So, I was adamant on starting on EOS, and the nice thing about the EOS is, we didn't have to make anything up. We didn't have to make any of our own, hey, this is how we're going to do business. This is how we're going to
You
operate.
just followed it.
We just followed it.
There's a
Yeah. And
system here. Let's
yeah,
just use it.
it's a system. It works, it's been proven, and it's been a lot of different companies have implemented EOS,
Yep.
and there's feedback loops, and so all those feedback loops. So yeah, it's a very robust system, and so it was just a matter of learning and implementing it instead of trying to figure things out. So it's along the same lines of like the coaching into getting into multifamily. It's just hey, we have a system that we can use. We just pull it off the shelf, open up the book, start reading. That's all you have to do to implement EOS is, buy the book traction and, start following it. But, I
And
wanted a little more help.
and
So,
I just want to reiterate that point again because the way you said it so subtly, but you hired a coach early on to help get into real estate,
yeah.
right? But then you hired a coach, an EOS implementer to accelerate your knowledge and learning of this. So the message is you have the mindset that if you're not the expert on something, I'm going to go try to find that person. First, it was partner with others to accelerate things, but now who can I hire and pay to coach me that has
Mhm.
already done this and been successful doing this? And I just think your
Yeah.
network, who you associate with, mentors, coaches, all that is so important to not only accelerating success, but quite frankly, a lot of times probably avoiding failures or setbacks because they've
Mhm.
seen it and they can understand. Like they can almost forecast or see the issues coming before you probably can if they have the experience.
And that's exactly what I was thinking going in is, how much time and energy am I going to spend, trying to figure out how to implement, EOS or the first time around with the coach was how much time and effort am I going to figure out trying to learn how to buy an apartment myself versus, pay $25,000 for a coaching program, which was probably the largest single check I had written at the time, but and with EOS, it was the same thing. It was a similar cost for a year from the implementer to work with us. But when I look at it, every time I've paid coaches, my growth is hockey sticks. It's just like that's the inflection point. It's you find somebody that can help you get to the next level, and that really, that's really been the key for me in a lot of phases is okay, here's where I'm at, here's where I need to get to, who's the person that can help me get there?
And the
It's
other thing
easy.
that comes up, we're talking about real estate here, and we love real estate investing. And people have asked me before, and I stole my answer, but what is your best investment ever? The best investment anyone can make first is in themselves, in your education, and your network. And that will take care of a lot of other things, including specific investments. So invest in yourself and your education and your growth, the people that you're around first, and that will prepare you to be successful in whatever specific, if it's real estate or another business, it will help set you up for that much more success in it specifically and make your investments then in assets even stronger. So very
Absolutely.
good. So you've kind of learned EOS. What the last couple of years looked like for you, Brian?
With the new company, I think there was a big mindset shift. And you're talking about networks and the people you hang around. I was probably 6 months after separating from the company, and fortunately, we had done well enough, in that company and financially that I had a big cushion leaving that company. There was a cash payout. And the way we decided to split things up is we transferred my shares in the company into shares into the properties. And so, we sold a couple of properties. So I had a big cushion. So, I had 6, 8, 10 months before I had to really figure out what was next. And remember talking with a guy that had, started and exited several businesses, a couple of them, the first one was bootstrapped and did a couple of venture-backed businesses where he exited. I remember I was sitting at lunch with him and we were just talking about what was going on. He asked me what I was doing next. I'm like, well, I would really love to start buying apartments in Salt Lake. It's just that's my hometown. I love the market. I think the market's doing great things. I just need to find the right partner. Because once again, my mindset was still in this partnership because that's what the coaching program told me.
Yep.
And he looked at me and he just said, why don't you just hire somebody? And I looked at him. I'm like, well, that because, and I started coming up with excuses. And then all of a sudden it sunk in. And I'm just like, and he explained it. He's like, look, go out, find a couple of people and hire them because number one, you're going to keep control of the business. You're not going to, so you have 100% control. You're not going to have any arguments, with the other partners, and he's like, number two, you keep all the equity. You're not splitting the pie. And so, that conversation really changed my perspective. And, we had a couple of good solid exits from properties and, I had a pretty fat bank account and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go start looking to hire people, and that was, another big pivot was just, and it came from one conversation. We were in Orlando at a conference and you're around the lunch table and, it was just like, wow, um, so yeah, hired somebody to run acquisitions for me, based out of Salt Lake City. And um he stuck with me for almost a full year. The first hire, um he just went to a different company, a larger, more robust company. I think he took a cut and pay, so maybe I wasn't doing something right. But anyway, I've got somebody else that was, already in the chute to get hired anyway, and so we got him replaced. So the model right now is a little bit different. Is you know I am looking to hire people now instead of find partners and share equity. I'm not gonna, not, if the right opportunity comes up, I'm not gonna, you know, um, not partner with somebody. But anyway, just a slightly different business model, so, looking at the EOS model, I'm the visionary, in the EOS system. I'm not um the integrator, I'm the guy at the top, the visionary,
Yep. Yep.
so we're starting to hire people. I've had a lot of lessons learned on. I think one of the mistakes I made implementing EOS so early is, EOS talks about, right person, right seat, and every seat has to be very well defined and
Yep.
whatnot. But, when you have a company of 10 to 15 employees, you can do that. I think one of the mistakes I made up front is I was treating the employees that I had like we were a company that was, 15, 20 employees, when in reality, there were three of us, just pushing forward. And um, so yeah, I think that was one of the lessons learned, and maybe one of the not dangers, or one of the reasons that I guess the EOS implementers say, yeah, you really need to have a certain amount of revenue, you need to have a certain amount of um, certain size before this is really going to work for you. But
Yep. And
um,
the two
yeah,
points I remember, you said right person, right seat. So first,
yep,
the right person means, do they meet the core values of the business? And
absolutely.
EOS has a
Yep.
process to help walk you through what are your core values for your business. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I remember, the GWC,
Get
or
it?
sorry,
Yeah,
gets it, wants it, and has the capacity to do
yes,
it. And
absolutely.
that's specific to the role. And if they don't have those things for that specific role, then you have maybe right person, wrong seat, and you got to figure that out with some
Yeah,
changes, some new hire, like whatever that means. You got to get the right person that meets the core values in the right seat in the right role, and clarify the roles and responsibilities are important too. I know.
Yeah. And so yeah, I think the mistake I made, like I said, was I was looking for people that were role players, and with a new company with three people, I don't need role players. I need builders, and so right now, going back and making the next hire, I had a little different mindset going in. It's like I'm not looking for somebody to fill one seat. I'm looking for somebody to hustle and wear a lot of hats. So so the guy that I'm hiring on Monday, I very much think that he's exactly that person where, it's just like, hey, we're gonna build this together. And, so I'm looking for somebody who's kind of much more entrepreneurial and much more, maybe less a role player, more of a jack of all, do it all, kind of like what you need to do with a small company.
Yeah,
So
you got to know it all, right? You got to be able to do it
yeah.
all and touch it all. I mean, sales, marketing, finance,
Yep.
operations, you name it. You got to be able to understand it all if there's only two, three, four people in the company, right? And the
Yeah.
employees, they got to get that stuff and or have the capacity to
Hmm.
learn it, right? They have to be able to, they have to be capable at a minimum. So
Yeah.
awesome.
And yeah.
So today, if we fast forward to today, so right now you're kind of in a little bit of a transition with your team. You've
Yeah.
had some recent acquisitions we talked about. You have some, maybe LOIs or things in the pipeline. So what are you really excited about as you move forward?
I'm excited about all the possibilities. I think moving closer to Salt Lake and being closer to home has really um, got me excited. I'm excited about the future of Salt Lake City. It's gone from a sleepy little city to a very bustling and energetic area. Olympics are coming back. That was just announced. You've got a couple of big families that are trying to bring an NHL team and a Major League Baseball team to the city, and so there's a buzz around there. And I mean, the Milken report just came out. They do an annual report of best cities, and the three cities in the state of Utah that qualify as a large city in Milken's report were all top 25. Two of them were top five. And so what gets me excited is the prospects of investing in an area that has so many good things going for it. The population's growing, the economy's growing. There's a lot of, entrepreneurs in the area. There's a lot of startups. And, we're also at a really good time in the market cycle where I think I don't know if we're at the bottom. We're still, it's probably gonna be 12 months before we can look back and say it, but I think we're close enough to the bottom that we can reach out and touch it, is how I would phrase it. So I'm excited about where we are in the market cycle right now. And I
And I
mean, to
think
be
right
honest,
now,
yeah.
if deals work well, they have, in my opinion, they don't speculate. Deals have to work. But if they
Yeah.
work right now, for this is very real estate specific. Think about your financing structure and debt structure. In my opinion, like we're doing a deal right now where we want to have a lot of flexibility as to what we can do with that. So I might not want a Fannie Freddie long-term fixed rate debt. I might want a small local bank debt for the time being for sure, where I can easily do rate modifications or other things with
Yeah.
those banks. So your financing structure right now in a potentially rate reducing environment, don't speculate that they're going to drop, but your financing structure, real estate specific, is more important now than it
Yeah.
was really important a couple years ago for different reasons, but it's always important. It's just a different strategy than a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I think the flexibility is the big thing. And we're actually pursuing a 5-year Freddie. And what we've done is, I mean, Freddie has a lot of options. There's a lot of different ways to get a Freddie Mac loan, but we're paying a little bit more to get a very flexible prepayment penalty or prepayment structure. So,
Yep,
when you go to a broker and just say, "Hey, I want a Freddie loan," if it's a 5-year loan, it's going to be a 5 4 3 2 1
correct.
prepayment penalty structure, which for non-real estate guys, if you're selling the property early, you pay a percentage of the loan value back to the lender for selling early. So
Right.
so
So
it discourages.
that's a step down. So like 5 4 3 2 1. If it was $1 million loan in year one, you'd have to pay a $50,000 5% prepayment penalty. Then each year it drops down. So
Yes.
sorry, keep
So
going.
So what we're doing is we're looking at Freddie loans that have a 32100.
Yep.
So we have to pay a little bit more on the interest rate to get that. It's the lenders are either going to get you on the front end or they're going to get you on the back end.
Yep.
That's essentially how it's going to work. And so, we're paying a little bit more up front in terms of rates, and I think a slightly higher, origination fee is what we're paying, but we get a 32100 prepayment penalty,
Yeah,
which means,
that's
first
great.
year, yeah, I mean, compare that to the 54321, we got
Yeah.
a pretty good opportunity to refinance. So, similar vein, just slightly different approach is now we have the permanent loan, the fixed rate that Freddie gives you, but we don't have that sting of trying to pay that prepayment penalty and exit.
Yep.
So if rates come down, 2 years from now, 1% prepayment penalty for a drop in rates, every day I'd pay that.
And the key that thing that you said there is just as you first of all be very aware of these things in when you're financing
Mhm.
and create flexibility right now so you have options in the future. I want
Yep.
to I want I want to step back and then I'll get into some kind of closing segment questions here,
Yep.
Brian. But
Yep.
if you I want to ask you to step back and just kind of reflect for a minute. How does what you have done and what you're doing now, how does that make you feel?
Mhm. Wow. You know, Entrepreneurship and running a business is a lot more roller coaster than I ever thought it would be. I mean, I spent 20 years as a government employee essentially, and I woke up, I went to work, I did the same thing, I went home, and it wasn't it was pretty even, but there's days that I'm like super excited about the potential, and there's other days where in the same time in the same day, um it's almost some days like I'm bouncing off the wall, floor to
Hmm.
ceiling. It's like I just signed a contract for an $18 million property, and you're jumping up and down, high-fiving, and then it's like, oh my gosh, we got to raise 8 million in this environment. Like, what did we just do? So
Yep.
there is a lot of that, but every morning I get up and it's just like, all right, we're going to do everything we can, and so I am excited for the future, but I think what a lot of people don't talk about is there is still a lot of self-doubt. There's still a lot of, can I actually do this? And I mean, the weird thing is I've syndicated 1,800 units, and I'm still having these little self-doubt things, but yeah, how do I feel? Every day is a little different, but I'm constantly more excited, and that gets me able to push through those little, you know, uh, little episodes of fear that I have where it's just like, crap, can I actually do this? It's like, yeah, I can do that. I've done it before. I've raised this many millions of dollars before. I can do it again. I can figure it out. So, future, I'm very excited for the prospects. I look at, what I've done, what I've been able to do. I've been 3 years now without having an employer and been doing perfectly fine. I think, when I look at the future and what this path affords to my family, it really is generational wealth, is what I'm looking at. And so, yeah, I am excited for the future. I'm excited for the prospects. But I
And
also realize it's going to take a lot of work to get there.
yeah, and a couple of things. I mean, self-doubt, can I do this? Limiting beliefs, but I also I suspect that the doubts you had 2, 3, 4 years ago, or the limiting beliefs you had
Yeah.
then are very different now. Now, if those same issues or challenges come up, you're like, yep, I've done that before. I know how to do it. But you're creating in a way bigger challenges, which is just stretching you and making you grow more and more and
Yep.
preparing you for, what you might face in 3, 4, 5 years from now, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's good. And then, um, I think the other thing that stands out is a lot of times fear and self-doubt. How
Mhm.
often do we create issues in our head that aren't real,
Yeah.
right? We create a lot of issues and anxiety and other things that probably don't come to fruition. So, um, I think that's relevant for a lot of people. That's not just a real estate thing. That's a everybody thing. It just depends on how much, how much are they stretching themselves or challenging themselves in different areas of life. And if you're doing that, you're probably having some of these fear, self-doubt, but also growth with it. So,
And come to think of it, if you don't have fear and self-doubt, I don't think you're pushing yourself hard enough. I don't think you're ever going to reach your potential if you don't have to face that, fear and self-doubt. It's just um it's part of growth is what it is. And I've realized that that's what it is. And when I'm pushing through fear and self-doubt, that is growth, and that's exactly what it is. And you're right, it's bigger problems. I remember like there's T. Harv Eker in one of his books talks about, if you're a level 3 person, you can only solve level 3 problems,
yep,
but as you grow and if you get to be a level 7 person, you can now solve the level 7 problems. And so you keep on growing to where you can solve the bigger and bigger problems. And, fortunately, the bigger the problem you solve, the more money you make,
yep,
So, the last acquisition fee, I mean, larger apartments. And I mean, I took a lot of risks starting my own company. I paid, two salaries, actually three salaries out of my back pocket for almost a full year before we
yeah.
closed the first property. But, the numbers that I'm getting back are a lot bigger than they were 3, 4, 5 years
And
ago.
I,
So
and I like the analogy of just the level 5 problems, the level 7 problems in level 7 solutions. The key is don't don't go into problems that you're not prepared for as well. So if you're at a level 7 capability, then you should be tackling level 6 and 7 problems, maybe thinking about level 8 problems. But if you're at a level
yeah,
4, you better not be thinking about a level 8 because it might bury you and bankrupt you and other things, right? So just
yeah,
be aware of, like,
agreed.
self-awareness around this is really important too, and keep growing at the pace that, to stretch yourself, but be wise about it, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, going back to the number analogy, if you're at level 6, don't go for a level 10 problem. I mean, maybe stretch yourself and hit that level 7. That's how you grow. But
Right,
I think you're
right.
absolutely right. Don't go too big all at once, or you're gonna um, I don't know. I think most people hit a wall. There's some very select individuals that will probably grow tremendously, but I think the best way forward, play the long game.
Yep.
Just go from level 1 to 2, and then from 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4, and don't try to skip steps. And I think you're going to be okay. And I think that applies to a lot of areas.
And I think the other thing you talked about is just the fear and self, to go back to that, you reframe that as growth. I think that's the other key, is as you have fear and self doubt and uncertainty and limiting beliefs and all the other things, reframe your mindset that those are key elements to growth and to making you better, again, in any area of life. Um, and if you do that and you continue to do that, then you're truly getting better yourself and you're truly playing the long game, as Brian references. So, Brian, I want to shift gears a little bit to a couple of closing questions. So, what would you say has been your key factor to success?
Yeah, I think we just talked about it, is just, being able to get to that next level, overcoming the fear and self-doubt and just saying, yeah, I can do it. It started 18 years ago when I bought my first single family home. I was afraid. It was something that I didn't know how to do, and it was just like, all right, I'm going to figure this out. A lot of people, millions of people have figured out how to buy a single family house. I can do it, and so and it was just, figuring things out, just say, hey, other people have done this before. That means I can do it. And so that's been a big part of it. And then just every time I have that fear and self-doubt, yeah, I mean, there have been times where, it stalls me for a while, but just always coming to that realization of, that self-awareness of this is what I'm feeling, this is why I'm feeling it. And if I can push through to the other side, that's where the growth happens.
Yep. That's awesome. And at the end of our like closing clip in our podcast, we talk about what do you want first, and second, educate and associate with others, which you've done. And the next one is take action, take courageous action, which is what you talked about. Is that your key factor for success, is getting over those things and taking the action, is what I heard. So
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely.
What has been the most impactful business or real estate book or podcast that you've read or listened to?
So the most influential podcast has been my own, and I think you probably would agree. I've learned more from podcasting than anybody who's ever listened to a podcast.
Yep.
It's just, I've interviewed a couple hundred people. We actually hit 500 episodes just recently. So,
Congratulations.
I mean, that's what I've learned the most from, and it kind of forces conversations like this that we're having.
Yep.
As far as book, I mean, we've talked about it already. It's almost always right next to my desk. Traction by Gino Wickman.
Awesome. What about the most impactful personal development book?
Ooh, personal development book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey.
Why? What stood out to you in that one?
That really is one that helped me reframe my mindset, more than anything else. It wasn't just learning the habits. And you got it right by your desk. Yep,
Of
there
course.
you go. But yeah, it wasn't just learning the habits. It was being able to gain that perspective. I forget the word that he uses for it, but you're able to yeah, move beyond yourself. And I think up until then, I was just like on a track, it's just like going to work, doing the same thing every day. And you get into that book and, all of a sudden it's like I control my destiny.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, that is awesome.
Yep.
I control everything that's happening. So if I want a better life, you know, it's 100% on me. And I think that was really the biggest change I had, biggest mindset shift that I had. And that's probably what got me really thinking more about, real estate and growth is I control my growth.
Yep. Yep.
So,
I love it. And that, yeah, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey is a classic in the self-development world. So awesome. Brian, I'd love the audience to be able to find out more about you. Where can people go to learn more?
LinkedIn's the easiest place. I probably spend too much time every day on LinkedIn. But reach out to me on LinkedIn, and that's probably the best place. Company website is streamlinecapitalgroup.com if anybody's interested. But yeah, LinkedIn's by far the best place to reach out to me, to follow me, and to if you want to listen to what I have to say, that's it.
And then your podcast, Diary of an Apartment Investor, is the podcast, 500 episodes. Congratulations on that.
Thanks.
Awesome.
And for everybody here, we're actually going to be, recording an episode of that with Phil. So
yes,
right now
we're gonna flip to it soon. So with that, Brian, I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thanks so much for coming on the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. We're signing off.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to the Moeller Real Estate and Business Podcast. We hope you found today's episode helpful. If you know current or aspiring investors or entrepreneurs or anyone that would benefit from today's episode, we appreciate you sharing it with them, or better yet, providing us a 5-star review. To learn more about Moeller Real Estate, visit our website at www.moellerre.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter or local events via our website. In closing, I encourage you to be purposeful in all areas of life, educate yourself, network with others that have been successful, take action, and lead. Thank you.